Welcome to the September 25th meeting of the Columbus City Council. We're so glad to have you with us. This is our last business meeting for the month, so it's going to be jam-packed full, no doubt about it, which is an indication of all the good people sitting out here. We also have some very special friends with us tonight, and we're going to get to meet them in just a minute. We want to get started, as we always do, on the right foot, and so we're going to call forward Chapel Colonel Robert H. Hart, who's Garrison Chaplain at Fort Benning. Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Please come forward.
I invite you to pray with me. Our gracious Lord, we pause this evening to ask your blessings on our city council members. Lord, as they strive to do what is right with all that live in Columbus, Father, I ask that you would grant them wisdom as they discuss the business of your people. Bless them with your understanding that they may be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. May you help us to live in harmony with one another, showing compassion to one another, selflessly serving the people of our community. We ask your blessings upon them at this time, and in your precious name we ask. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so very much. And now we're going to have the Pledge of Allegiance. We have some special helpers, so I want to ask you to come forward like we talked about. Come to the big table here. Tiasha's going to get you a microphone as they prepare and organize themselves. If you all will stand and prepare for them to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, and there is justice for all.
Excellent. And I think I forgot to say, I was so excited about you all getting up and doing such a good job. This is the Reese Road Leadership Academy first graders are here, and they've got one special guest. She's not a first grader, but she's an alternate, a helper. And so what we want to do is have you guys say your name and how old you are. You want to start since you're holding the microphone? What's your name and how old are you?
Say your name. Iris, 6.
All right.
My name is Harper, and I'm 6.
Okay, great.
My name is Adriana, and I'm 6 years old. My name is Sanaya, and I'm 6 years old. My name is Bradley, and I'm 6 years old. That's on?
I think it's on. I think it's on.
My name is Jonathan.
And how old are you?
6.
6, okay.
My name is Haley, and I'm 6.
Okay, great.
My name is Janai, and I'm 6. I'm Sean, and I'm 6. I'm 7.
7, okay. And I think we've got one young man.
My name's Sophia. 6. My name is 4.
And Sophia's a special helper today. She's not in class. And yes, young man, the one in the back? Yes.
My name is Jordan, and I'm 6.
Okay, did we get everybody? Yes. Okay, fantastic. Let's give them another round of applause. And we've got a lot of brothers and sisters and parents, so if you're a supporter of the Reese Road Elementary School Leadership Academy, stand up and let us recognize you as well. Would you like to say a few words? Yes, ma'am, if you would just introduce yourself and say a few words.
I'm Alice Creech. I teach first grade at Reese Road Leadership Academy, and I'm thankful for the invitation that we had to be here tonight.
Thank you.
And good evening, I'm Valerie Jackson, first grade teacher, and I'm actually Iris's teacher, and we were invited by her grandmother.
I was going to
And
say,
we are grateful to be here.
We've got a relative here. If you're a granddaughter of Mimi Woodson, raise your hand. Yeah, all right, there we go. Excellent. Yes, Iris was the one that said that she would handle the microphone. So she must take after her grandmother. Not shy, not shy. Thank you all so much. Will you come back and help us next time? Excellent. Thank you very much. Let's give them a round of applause as they go home and eat some dinner.
Excuse me.
Thank y'all.
She said, would you come back again? And what did you say? Yes. Thank you.
Excellent. Well, thank you all. All right. Well, as you all know, 100 years ago, a group of leaders from Columbus, Georgia, went to Washington, D.C., and urged with great passion and intensity that Columbus be made home of an infantry training base, came to be known as Fort Benning. And ever since that day, there's a lot of communities around the United States where the bases were there and the towns built up around them. We're one of the few probably that urged, some might say begged, for the base and have endeavored to keep the base here ever since. And so we have a very, very special relationship with Fort Benning. Every 2 years or so, we get a new commanding general, always the best of the best. I don't know why we get so fortunate. But today we have relatively new commanding general. I've been here several months. Colonel Gary Brito is here, and we'd like to ask you, sir, to come forward and just say hello and tell us a little bit about what's going on at Fort Benning. Good evening.
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor Tomlinson, members of the City Council and the communities as well. Thank you so much for the invitation and the opportunity to address you. And Mayor Tomlinson, I'm actually the 53rd CG of Fort Benning. So many have come through the gates since officially became Fort Benning in 1922. And as you know, 1918 before that. In just a few weeks, we'll cross the cusp of our centennial, and we've had some celebration events throughout the year, and it will end with a reception with the community as well on the 18th of October. And I'm indeed honored and privileged to be back at Fort Benning. I say back because I started my career here 31 years ago, a little bit over 31 years ago, as a second lieutenant in what was then the Infantry Center. And I've had, this makes the third assignment back here at Fort Benning. Blessed to be back here as a CG now. We last left in 2006, and I was assigned to the 3rd Brigade of the 3rd Infantry Division when it was on Kelly Hill back in Fort Benning, when it was just the Infantry Center then, and now back, and honored to be back as the CG of the Maneuver Center of Excellence. We have around 16,000 soldiers, soldiers alone, and then you would add several thousand more family members on Fort Benning proper, and very much part of the community, and very glad to be part of the community. And I mentioned to many, so if you heard this before, I apologize, but this is the best community relationship I've seen on any military installation I've been on, and trust me, there's been a couple. My wife says 10 moves. My wife says 16 moves. I say 10. I think she's right, so there's been a lot of them. And again, I've been here at Fort Benning before. Very much looking forward to kicking off the next 100 years, and I think all of us will have a continued great partnership with that. We're doing a lot of exciting things at Fort Benning, leading innovation for the Army, to include supporting the efforts of the Army Futures Command, which I'm sure many have read about. And I am pretty confident that we will have another prosperous and innovative full 100 years in the future. So thank you very much for your time. I'm very much looking forward to working with you for what I hope is 2 years of command. I just went over 6 months last week, and thank you for the opportunity to address you this evening.
Oh, thank you so much. And we want to meet those who are with you. Of course, we met Colonel Hart, but yeah.
Sure.
Ma'am, thank you for having us. I'm Colonel Clint Cox. I'm the garrison commander, General Brito's city manager.
Fantastic. Yes.
I'm the mayor, he's the manager.
All right. Oh, and yes, we got a few more. Just say hello.
I'm going to put you on the stage. Come on.
Yeah.
Hi, Captain Brian Choi. I'm the aide-de-camp to General Brito.
I have a great crew that helps me out.
Wonderful, wonderful. Yes, sir.
How you doing, ma'am? I'm Staff Sergeant Schomeyer. I'm the CG's driver, ma'am.
Wonderful. Well, it's so just wonderful to have you guys here. And General Brito, thank you so much again. I don't know what we do to get the best generals ever. And I'm not slighting any of the others. I'm just saying somehow we get the best. So thank you so much for being here. We're so glad to know you. And we do have a few that want to say hello to you. We have Counselor Bruce Huff.
General Brito, again, thank you for being here this evening. General Wesley spoke so highly of you at the change of command ceremony. And
Thank you so
everything
much.
has been, he said you all have been friends for years. And
And
he
we
said
served
that
in,
we were in great hands
Afghanistan.
and things are moving along very smoothly. But what I wanted to say to everyone, if you don't think General Brito is a very cool person and his staff, during the weekend of the Gold Star families being in town, Councilor Thomas and Councilor House were there. It had to be at least 95 degrees, and they were in dress blues, as cool as ever, carried out all that had to be carried out that day, and everything went well. And the families were very pleased, and said they had never been treated so well. So thank you for all that you and your staff do, and I look forward to seeing you on the 18th and working with you going forward.
Sure, thank you, and that means a lot. I'll pass it to the team.
All right, and we have Counselor Mimi Woodson.
General Bruto, it's a pleasure to have you here, and in behalf of the Tri-City Latino Festival, we want to say thank you. We were a little bit concerned with the chain of command if we would get the support that we've been given in the past years, and you graciously gave us that support, send a representative. The band was fantastic, everyone loved it, and we just want to say thank you. Thank you for your continuing support. Welcome back to Fort Benning, and Columbus is home. This is where you're supposed to leave your duffel bag at.
I have a couple duffel bags, too. And thank you, ma'am. And Colonel Alberog sends the same, and he was very happy for that. And we have the best band in the Department of Defense.
Well, we have a few veterans, Counselor Woodson, Counselor Props Barnes, who's not here this evening, and of course, Counselor House here, and we're all supporters, so thank you so much. We know you have pressing matters, so we're not going to keep you. We're just so very glad you came to say hello, and welcome.
Thank you for the opportunity. Looking forward to being part of the team.
Right. Appreciate you. Thank you all. All right, and with that, we will move into the minutes. We've got a request to approve the minutes for September 11th of the City Council meeting, and it doesn't look like there's any others, just that. Is there a motion? Second, all right, any changes or? All right, all those in favor, please state aye. Aye. All right, and we will move in then to the the city attorney's agenda. Mr. Fay.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. The first item up for business tonight is the zoning hearing on short-term rentals that was continued from last meeting. This is a change, as you know, to the Unified Development Ordinance. And these short-term rental units are those renting for less than 30 days. If you're looking on ECAP, there is a proposed amendment with a red line on it. I think that every counselor has had a chance to see. We can have more discussion now if council wants to, but the amendment does need to be put in the form of a motion if that's the way council wants to go. So we're ready for any more discussion or a motion on the amendment.
Excuse me, let's see. We have Counselor Thomas.
I don't know if our planning department wants to say something first, but I do want to make a motion that the amendment be adopted, and then I would like to speak to it.
Okay, that's a motion that the amendment be adopted. Is there a second? Second. All right, any discussion as to the amendment?
As I said, the planning department or Mr. Hutchison may have something they want to say about it, but I do have a couple of things that I'd like to say, Mayor.
All right, Rick, or?
Good evening. Councilor Thomas and several of us met earlier, I guess last week, I'm trying to get my days straight here, to discuss this. We had a good conversation. I think we had a good conversation about things we were trying to deal with and so forth. In looking at everything here in terms of dealing with the application itself, dealing with the operation, I think we worked out some of the details, some of the questions you had, Councilor Thomas, primarily, that I think we satisfied those to that point. So I think we're at that stage really where we're ready to go forward with the ordinance, the understanding about trying to deal with how we're going to manage short-term rentals in this community. And I think we're at that point now.
We did have quite a good meeting. I think we had a very open conversation about some of the concerns that had been raised. And one of the things that happened at that meeting was I I was reinforced to me that we were all on the same page, trying to get to the same end.
Correct.
And it was one of those things that, as we went through, there were I'd like to make 3 points about what we did. First of all, much of the verbiage that you see here that's dealing with the short-term rentals is the same, they're the same regulations for any other business that is applying for a business license in Columbus. There was nothing that was fairly new to the short-term rental. We did look at the question about doing a background check, and it's my understanding from that meeting that it is not unusual as we are giving business licenses and those kinds of things to various and sundry businesses, that background checks are done on the owners and the people who are involved in that. And so what this amendment does, excuse me, is it requires a background check on the owner of the property, and if there is a short-term agent affiliated with the property, that person also has a background check. And the background check is in place to see if there are felony convictions that deal with crimes of moral turpitude. And this is the same kind of background check that our Inspections and Codes Department does with other types of businesses in Columbus. One of the questions I asked that day at the meeting was, well, what about the children, the homes, the children's homes that we've been talking about lately? The state requires some of those kinds of regulations, and so we are not duplicating that, but we are making sure that those people who are the owner has that background check. We are requiring that the owner of the property sign the application for the business license. And we had quite a conversation about what does that mean, and what if the owner doesn't live here? Well, everywhere in the United States there are notaries, and so you can have a signature that's notarized no matter where you live. And there are other businesses, let me back up. Anyone who applies for, and if that's not right, you guys make sure that I'm corrected. Anybody that applies for a business license in Columbus, that business license has to be signed by the owner. Okay? And if the owner lives in Italy, it still has to be signed by the owner before that business license is so that's one of the things that's there. A lot of the information that you see on here are things that are required by the business license itself. The other piece that I wanted to talk to you about, these guys teased me, I will tell you quite mercilessly, about my conversation about the 2-hour requirement to have somebody on site if there was a problem, and I kept referring to going fishing at Lake Eufaula, and they teased me about going fishing at Lake Eufaula, but I tell you, going fishing at Lake Eufaula is a fun thing to do. So at any rate, what we decided to do was to say that there is not a requirement that that person be available within 2 hours. However, there must be a posting in the facility, in the short-term rental, that lists the name and telephone number of someone to call in case of a concern or an emergency, so that not only the person who is renting the short-term rental can get in touch with somebody if there's a problem, but if there's the police are called or something for loud noises or whatever else, there's a name and telephone number there. I did raise with our legal staff the propriety of putting someone's personal name and telephone number on a wall in a short-term rental facility. And I was told that that is what is required on all business licenses in Columbus. I don't know if it's a Georgia law, but it is in Columbus. And since then, as I have been out in various places around town, I've looked at the business license, and there it is, with the name and the telephone number. Now, it may not be your personal number, but it's a number that you can get in contact with. I think that overall, the thing that I want to make sure that the counselors and other folks who watched 2 weeks ago as we talked about this, we had quite a conversation that morning about all of these issues and these concerns that not only I had, but other people had brought to me. And I believe that we are to the point now where we can adopt this, this proposal, this ordinance, and it will do what we need to have done. And it will make sure that those people who have short-term rentals in Columbus have a business license and pay the proper taxes, the hotel motel tax and any sales tax. And there are provisions in place in order for all of that to happen. So I am urging you to vote in favor of the amendment and then in favor of the ordinance as it is presented tonight.
All right, anything else?
Okay, you want to get a vote on the amendment, and then we'll see if there's any more discussion or anybody else want to be heard.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for this amendment, and so now we have discussion is closed. I'm going to take an oral vote. All those in favor, please state aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Okay, so the amendment
Okay,
passes.
the amendments have passed. Is there anybody in the audience that wants to be heard on this short-term rental ordinance? Everybody good? CVB is here. Okay, we will bring this back now on second reading in 2 weeks for a vote at the 9 o'clock meeting. All right, thank you. Mayor, the next zoning item, this is a hearing on zoning at 1600 Blanchard Boulevard, requested to go from general commercial to light manufacturing for bulk storage use. It's recommended approval. Mr. Smallman, are you here? Okay. Mr. Jones, have y'all heard anything from the applicant? All right. Well, if anybody's here for or against and wants to be heard on this, raise your hand. Mayor, what's the pleasure of council on this? You want us to continue it or bring it back?
As I recall, there is some sort of ordinance that dictates this situation. So is it when the move-in is not here, the applicant's not here, that we postpone the first read? I just can't recall, but we've been through this a couple of times.
Yeah, I don't know that it's in the UDO itself, but
Yeah. Yeah, why don't we just bring it back? Do
Okay.
we need a motion for that?
no, we'll just bring it back then on
Okay.
first reading. Make a note, Ms.
And I
Clerk.
think there is something, because we've been round and round about this, so find it again and get it to
I know we've
everybody.
looked at it.
Just so we don't have to go look it up every time. I think it's an ordinance, but maybe it's a resolution.
We will get that back on first reading in 2 weeks. Ms. Clerk, you can make a note that the applicant was not present. Next zoning item is 435 21st Street. This is the old Rose Hill School property going from single-family 3 to, let's see, current zoning SFR 3, proposed zoning residential office. So multifamily proposal, 85 units, recommended for approval. Mr. Scott Henry is the applicant. I think Mr. Ammerman was here with him. Any questions around the table from council on this? Mr. Henry, you want to come up and give them a brief synopsis of what you're proposing there? Give them your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Scott Henry. My personal address is 1128 Greenleaf in Wilmette, Illinois. I'm with Celadon Holdings, excited to talk with you this evening about our proposed redevelopment of the Rose Hill School. We are proposing to convert the school and the adjacent play area into 85 units of multifamily apartments. The school itself will be placed on the National Register and will be restored to a historic standard. There'll be some residential units in the school, along with management office and some common area amenities for the residents. And then in the play area, or the field area, we're proposing to build a new building with some additional units. The new building will be designed in a way that complements the historic building. It will not be a copy of the historic detailing, but it will be a masonry building designed to complement the architecture of the historic building. The project will consist of 21 bedroom units, 32 bedroom units, and 35 three-bedroom units. We will be hiring River City contractors. They're a local general contractor. It's very important to us to hire locally. Todd Ammerman is with me today to address any questions you might have, but the intent would be to hire all local subs so that the local economy benefits. We've also hired 2WR Architects, a local architectural firm, to help us with the design. With that, I'm happy to address any questions.
We have Counselor Thomas.
Mr. Henry, will there be any restriction on the renters? I mean, income, age, any of those kinds of things?
There are no age restrictions. The income will be restricted to somewhere between 60 and 80% AMI, area median income.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Let's see if we got any other questions in the audience. Doesn't look like it. Appreciate y'all being here, and we're going to vote in 2 weeks at the 9:00 a.m. meeting.
Thank you.
All right. Okay, next, Mayor, the zoning ordinance is for .43 acres at 1504 17th Street, going from residential multifamily to historic. Proposed use, residential florist, Mr. Benefiel. I saw him back there. You want to come on up, David, and briefly tell them your name and address and what you're proposing to do as opposed to commercial location?
I'm Mark McCollum. I'm here representing Mr. David Benefield, the owner of this property at 1504 17th Street. My address is 765 Ray Drive here in Columbus. Mr. Benefield has purchased this property. He is the current owner of Ann's Porch, located at Girard Street. Business, a florist that's been there for 30-plus years, and Mr. Benefield is looking to move his business to this new location. We're requesting a rezoning of the property to historic. Mr. Benefield plans to not only have his business there, but he also plans to live inside the house. It's a residential property, plans to live at the business.
Anything at this time? Doesn't
Any
appear to be
other
any questions
questions?
from council.
All right. Anybody in the audience want to be heard? Don't see any hands, but we appreciate y'all being here. We'll vote in 2 weeks, 9:00.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor, other than that, we just need a short executive session to cover a matter in litigation and personnel.
Now, we have a whole bunch of folks here I thought were here to speak on a zoning issue. A public agenda. Okay, we got it. All right, just didn't want to leave anybody out, so, okay. So you're done, Mr. Fay?
Yes. thank
Okay,
you.
fantastic. All right, so moving on to public agenda, we're going to call forward Ms. Margot Truitt, who would like to speak about a neighborhood issue.
Good evening. You just go ahead and get started?
ma'am. I'm going to put the timer on as soon as you
Okay.
say your name and address, and then what I will do is give you 5 minutes, because that's the period of time it runs. You'll get a warning, and then you'll have another 5 minutes if you wish to continue.
I will need all of that, I can guarantee, okay. Okay, well, good evening, I'm Margot Truitt, and my husband and I live at 6330 Abbey Drive, and we've been there for over 25 years. And I have a great deal of ambivalence this evening being here. I hate that this issue has come to this, but it has. I'm here to represent several neighbors from Brittany, too, to present to you some issues we've been dealing with for the past 2.5 years. But my main reason for being here is my concern for the safety, health, and well-being of my family, especially my 3 grandchildren. After having worked since the age of 15, I was thrilled to be able to be a stay-at-home grandmother when my first grandchild was born 3 years ago, and coincidentally, 3 years ago was about the time that our neighborhood challenges began. Our next-door neighbor, Mr. Winfred Shipman, and his family moved into 6324 Abbey Drive in 2011. They were good neighbors, and we had a very friendly relationship. He and his grandchildren have been in our home. When he was committed to the hospital for an extended period of time during the summer of 2015, we mowed his lawn, checked on his daughter and grandchildren who were living in the home at the time, and brought him a meal when he got home. But in November 2015, we began to see some changes in the appearance of his property and his behavior. He was progressively becoming more erratic, aggressive, and belligerent. Many of us have felt threatened and began documenting these changes with pictures and videos, some of which you'll see in this presentation. Our goals for this evening is to make sure the council is aware of issues we have with this neighbor, attempts we have made with the system to resolve the issues, and the ineffectiveness of the system and the escalation of these issues to major problems. The first major issue is that of hoarding. And as I'm sure you are very aware, this is not allowed according to this city ordinance. In the next several slides, you will see pictures of the trash accumulation over the past 18 months, along with our response and some of the outcomes. Our initial response was to call 311, which several of us did multiple times. We emailed our city council representative and the 311 service director. Environmental Services came out several times and a court date was set. Mr. Shipman was told to clean up the mess, but we were disappointed to hear that he only received a $50 fine. Needless to say, the trash buildup continued, and we continued our efforts with very little results. At one court appearance, the judge told Mr. Shipman that no one wants to see his trash and he could put it in his house or his vehicle. So you can see the result. His house and vehicles became filled with trash. At one point, as you can see, the furniture and trash ended up in the street, and still we saw very little improvement. So here we are in January of this year, and again, as you can see, the escalation of garbage continues. These pictures are just from the past several weeks. Throughout the past 18 months, 311 and Environmental Services have been contacted repeatedly. Mr. Shipman has gone to court at least 7 times for solid waste with fines that have not been effective. And with the inconsistent actions of the court, we don't feel very hopeful of any change. Next is the problem of junk vehicles on the property. As you can see, Mr. Shipman has quite a collection of vehicles, as many as 14 at one time, and many have not been moved in a very long time. This vehicle has not been moved in 18 months. This other one hasn't been moved in a year, and you can see the vegetation growth on the wheels last September. You can see some wheels are buried in the ground. Some of the vehicles in the driveway are on jacks and have been missing tires, and all in all, it's been quite a mess. The second major issue is that of his backyard. It's been a real problem with the overgrowth of his backyard. And this picture, I think, speaks for itself. Again, we notified Environmental Services, and Mr. Shipman's been to court quite a few times about this issue. In August of this year, he was given a citation and court date in October, and at this point, there has been no mowing of his grass. The third major issue is that this property is not within city codes. It begins with his self-built fence. On the side of his other next-door neighbor, the Goldbergs, the fence is leaning and is over 12 feet high in places. At this time, Mr. Shipman told Codes Enforcement that he will remove the fence, but we have seen no progress to that effect. The second part of this issue is that of unsafe buildings. He built this addition to the back side of his home without a permit or without inspection. Codes enforcement was notified, and he was mandated to apply for a permit in March of this year. This, too, is scheduled to be addressed in October. Another part of this issue, and to me a very critical part, is that this property is unfit for human occupancy. This picture is of the front door, of his front door 6 months ago. And this video shows him 6 months ago entering the house of his by having to climb up a mound of garbage. And again, that was 6 months ago, and this is what the front door looks like today. It's a barricade of furniture, trash, and clothes. We do not believe he is able to get into this house. No one has seen him go into that house recently. He stays in the yard when he is around, even washing his laundry in a bucket in the yard and hanging it to dry on his front porch, which is where it stays until he changes his clothes in the yard. We do not believe he lives at this property. We do not know where he lives, but we know that he has another home in Catala. Officer Smith from Codes Enforcement said the address on Mr. Shipman's current driver's license is in Catala rather than on Abbey Drive. We believe this house on Abbey Drive is merely a dumping ground for his trash and for the treasures he picks up on his rounds. The fourth major issue is that of mosquito, snake, and rodent infestation, and I apologize up front for the images here. Well, we begin with the issue of mosquitoes. Mr. Shipman has at least 6 bird baths in his front yard with plants in them that he keeps filled with water. They smell putrid and they are filled with mosquito larvae. The health department was notified and they came out and treated, and he dumped out the treatment. The next part is that of rodent infestation. This video taken in late August is from our security camera on the side of our house, which is next to Mr. Shipman's. You can see the rats are coming from the area of the 2 vehicles on his property, which are covered with mattresses and have open windows. This is in broad daylight, and this morning we saw a video where we had as many as 11 rats in that location. And let me point out that the area to the far left of the video is right across from where my grandchildren play every day. These are 2 of the rats that were caught. Our neighbors across the street had their cat gift them with 3 rats recently on their doorstep, and another neighbor caught and killed several rats as well. You can see these vehicles are filled with trash, some of which contain food and have open windows in which rats go in and out. Just this morning, my husband went outside and heard squealing from this white truck, and he saw several rats inside the truck and one attempting to get out and squeeze through the window. Earlier this month, our security cameras captured this video showing Mr. Shipman, after bringing in a haul of garbage, take 2 milk jugs and dumping them on a stump in his yard right next to our property line. This stump is located only 15 feet from the area we saw in the previous videos of the rats. We took this picture that same evening, and needless to say, by the next morning, that stump was picked clean. We contacted Environmental Services and the Health Department. The Health Department was very responsive and have been baiting the sewers. We felt like the issue may have been resolved, and then as I was taking a walk with my grandchildren last week, we encountered this. At this point, the sewers have been baited twice, but we feel quite certain this issue has not been resolved. Those vehicles have not been moved, emptied of trash, or windows closed. And the final major issue is that of the decline of our property values. The Goldbergs were considering moving out and had 3 realtors come out to give them an estimate on their home, and they were told repeatedly that there was no way their house would sell with the property next door. We all feel like we are stuck and we are victims here. And yet, in spite of our attempts, our problems continue to escalate. And so our question for the City Council tonight is, what is it going to take? Is it going to take another hoarder home explosion like this one in August on 15th Avenue? Is it going to take another rat infestation in the city? Or is it going to take my grandchildren being bit by a rat? Just what's it going to take? We came here today with these goals in mind, and we're asking you to, number one, see that this house be inspected for safety and health concerns, because we have some real issues and concerns with that. Consider an ordinance prohibiting the storage of food and solid waste in vehicles. And let us know what the next steps will be to resolve this issue, or are we just supposed to live with this as we have for the past 2.5 years? And if there's no resolution, we would like to see a decrease in our property tax assessment. As a city council, we implore you to seriously consider ways to address the ubiquitous hoarding issue, and I know you have been thinking of that. And I'm asking these things for the safety and security of my grandchildren. My prayer is that when they look out the window in my home from their playroom, they don't see this anymore, but that they will see and grow up healthy and safe in our beautiful city of Columbus. I thank you very much for your attention, for your time, and for the service that you give our city.
Well, thank you. And I guess my only response is, my God. What's going on? John, can you come down here and tell us what's going on, or Pam? It sounds like you've been citing people. We have the new ordinance that should prevent this. I understand the court giving them some leeway. Have we contacted New Horizons? I mean, there's clearly some issues here. So kind of tell us what's going on, because the city doesn't allow this. It's just simply not allowed.
We have dealt with Mr. Shipman on several occasions. As you see in the attachment I gave, the documents I have used, every time we brought him into violation, every court order we've taken him, he's probably been fined over $2,600 in fines. We have now moved, we have another kind of tool in the arsenal which we have gotten approved, that we can do a court-ordered abatement. So when he comes to court October the 3rd, the intent is to get a court-ordered abatement to get all of that material removed off the property. So at that point, that's really, because getting him another fine, as you see, he just pays the fine and continues to do it. When we do the court-ordered abatement, then that becomes a lien on his property, and therefore, if he does try to intend to sell it, then he would have to pay that lien to get it cleared.
Does he have, I'm sorry, John, does he have relatives? It could be that he's not cognitively able to understand what's going on here or appreciate. Does he have relatives? Is somebody caretaking him?
Nobody, when we see him, it's typically him by himself. I've never really seen.
I can tell you, I know his family, and at this point, he has alienated all of his family. He has no one left around him. His daughters, he doesn't have anything to do with him, his brother. So he is basically alone. Now, every once in a while, we might see one daughter.
Okay, and if you should speak again, come forward, because we want to get it on. John, I want you to continue. I do want you to make a note. Maybe Mr. Fay can make a note. I think one appropriate request would be for the city to require him have a guardian named, or some sort of ad litem named, so that he's not there alone. Because certainly I'm no expert, but it doesn't take an expert to understand that he may not be able to discern his interest. And so anyway, I think that would be appropriate. And Clifton, you just have to see if it's allowed for us to request that he have some sort of a guardian or representative appointed by the court. But anyway, so go ahead, John.
So that will, we've also cited him for the illegal lean-to. Like I said, that's the addition he made on the, that's the addition that he added onto the back of the property. Once again, that's also for October the 3rd to discuss those things. We had to reissue them citation because when we took him to court, they cited him for the fine and closed the case. So therefore, we had to go back out there once it was in March that he did not get the citation and he didn't come and get a permit. We had to recite him again on the same issue. So, like I said, right now, we have started to use court-ordered abatements. We did one on Bishop Drive, and we have a few others we have that gives us a little bit more teeth. Instead of just the continued complaints, that we're able to do something about the property. So ideally, at the end of October, well, October the 3rd, we go to the court, and we will be asking for a court-ordered abatement to be able to take care of everything that's on the property. Now, the only adjutant there is that the junk cars, we can't tow off private property. So we're back around to that situation again. So, because they're not on the right-of-way. So we will be able to take care of the trash, we'll be able to take care of the grass and the weeds, we won't be able to take care of the vehicles.
But it is violative to have those vehicles on your private property, vehicles that have flat tires, broken windshields, expired tags, vehicles that are not operational. You can't store non-operational vehicles.
That's correct.
Okay.
Then he goes, he's fined, and then it continues to happen. The only other abatement option we would have is be to tow it, but we can't legally tow off the private
And we can't do that because of state law.
That's correct. So even though we know that some of them have flat tires, they have busted windows, they have stuff in them, all we can do is cite him, bring him to court, and then he's fined, and there's no other legal arm I have to do to get him off the property.
What's that? All right, we've got some counselors here. As I said, I think we definitely need some sort of a representative for this gentleman, and we need to contact some of our support services we have in this community to see if they can help as well. Councilor Garrett.
I'd like to add all my hoarders to the list for the Guardians as well. You have the list. I gotta say, I mean, this is beyond frustrating because I think since I've been on council, that's one of the things I've been trying to get done is amending our ordinances. And now we've given them the teeth. They're going out and they're citing them. And the court that we are over is, I mean, unfortunately, this has been repeated with our offenders, that they are not getting severe enough fines. They're doing the same thing over and over again. I have one right now that's in contempt of court, and it's a horrible house too, and it's not going away. I mean, it upsets me because I have constituents who are older, they're trying to move, they want to sell their homes, and their values are down, and we don't have enough teeth. So I would request that by the next work session, if possible, I'd like to know, Clifton, what our maximum jurisdiction is as far as what we can do, maximum fines a city can levy, if we can impose jail time. And then it needs to be addressed with our environmental court too, because there are folks who are just repeat offenders and they're abusing the system. But I want to amend our ordinances to put in escalating fines if they're repeats, and we need to do something to address this problem.
Your maximum fine is $1,000, and then or 90 days in jail, or both. I believe that 90 days is right.
Well, and you know, frankly, the 90 days in jail may be as beneficial to him as to anybody, because he'll get services there.
They can always have people evaluated who go into jail that can't comprehend.
Yeah, that get services that they can't normally get. Well, something needs to be done. I mean, we've talked about this too, for those who are listening. We're in a very difficult position where we cannot dictate to a judge what he needs to do, because there's separations of the legislative branch, executive branch, and judicial branch. We have sent messages that we take this very seriously by enforcing our law, making more serious our laws. And so hopefully they'll, understand this is something that is of primary importance for the citizens of Columbus. Let's see, Councilor Thomas.
Mr. Hutchinson, I have a couple of questions. First of all, does all of these citations go to environmental court, or do any of them go to Superior Court?
They all go to environmental court.
Do we have any choice in that?
Just based off the violations, all of these nuisances, local nuisances, are reported to environmental court.
Mr. Fay has said that at this point, the fine, the repeated fine is $1,000 as the max. I'm with
Per day.
Yes.
Per day.
Per day?
Correct.
Okay, that was another thing I wanted to ask you. If you go to court on October the 3rd, and this guy is cited, and he pays a fine, can you go back out there October the 4th and cite him again?
Yes.
Yeah.
If the
And
things are
October the
still
5th
invalid.
and cite him again?
Yes.
And October the 6th and cite him again?
Yes.
If you need a ride, I'll take you out there. Yeah, I mean, just to let this go on and on is just, I applaud your, I don't know. And so the towing of the vehicles, let me make sure I understand that. That's a state law that says we can't tow a vehicle off
private property.
Private property.
That's
Even if, as the mayor said, it's not licensed or doesn't have tires and all that kind of stuff?
That's correct.
We've asked the General Assembly.
We've asked several
change
years
that.
to amend that.
Is that on our legislative agenda for this time? If not, I would request that it be put back on there. And let's have a conversation with our delegation about this kind of a problem that we've got to have some relief. I do applaud your patience. I see this long list here, and for you to be coming down here tonight after all of this has gone on, I probably would have been here before now, but We need to make sure that, again, as Councilor Garrett was saying, that we do whatever is necessary to make this as legally uncomfortable for not only this particular person, but anybody else in town that's doing this. There may not be other locations in town that are as significant and severe as this, but there are other locations in town where this kind of stuff is happening. And we need to be as on top of it as we can. And I know, Mr. Hutchinson, inspections and code do that, and appreciate it. And I know that your hands are tied. Let's see what we can do to untie those hands. Thank you, Mayor.
I think Councilor Thomas makes a very good point. I will say that there has been a lot of talk, Mr. Fay, at the state legislative level about getting back to local rule, home rule. Really, there's been this march the past 10, 12 years to consolidate power in Atlanta, to dictate these statutes that take it out of our hands so we can't write tickets and do such things. And we need to take advantage of the changing winds. And we need to perhaps show our delegation this PowerPoint and say, there's no way we can let our citizens live like this. You've got to give us the power to handle our own jurisdictions. And so I think as they're starting to talk about this, you see bipartisan outrage with these state laws that aren't allowing people to do the basics that they need to do for fire safety, health in this instance. We need to take advantage of that changing tide. So just think about that as...
Oh, I agree. The vehicle item needs to be put back on the agenda, but if this gentleman is fined and sentenced to some jail time, the court can order an evaluation of this gentleman immediately.
Yeah.
So.
And if the law is changed, we can start towing cars, out of there. So at some point, we have to, I understand and am a strong property rights person. At the same time, when your property rights begin to infringe upon the, enjoyment and inhabitability of your property, then your rights stop. So I think this has exceeded his property rights. Councilor Baker.
Because I've run into this before, Mr. City Attorney, but I think if he goes in and the court fines him, but then gives him 30 days to clean it up, then we can't go back the next day and the next day, can we? I mean,
That's right.
If they give him a time certain.
That's a condition of the sentence, but if he's appearing day after day or week after week, then the court's got to realize that you can't give probation indefinitely.
And that's one of the problems, too. They get strung out so long that it gets out of control. Does the court have, I'm just asking, any jurisdiction other than fines and jail?
Other than putting people on probation, they have some discretion about a probated sentence, but that could only be a maximum of 12 months with this type of offense.
But as far as cleaning up the property,
No.
they would have to refer it back to us.
Well, what we've done now is we issue a court order to the judge to ask to have a court-ordered abatement. So then he approves that abatement, so that gives us the right to come onto the property to remove the nuisances. So we'll take, but like I said,
But you're still faced with him approving that versus another fine, another delay. So
that's
that's
correct.
still in his hands to.
That's correct.
We can't tell him to issue the abatement. We just
Correct.
request it.
Yes, we can request, that's right.
And then is it immediate? Is there a waiting period?
Ideally, we do it there, then we go to our bid process to get our contractors to bid how much it'll cost for them to take that material off the site, and then the lien is then added to the property. So, like I said, at that point, it's almost immediate, because as soon as we get it, then we give it to our vendors to price, because we don't know what it is until we have the
No, I
approval from
understand.
the court.
Have you seen a history as to when the judge will go to the abatement rather than just another fine,
Well,
another citation?
I'm pretty sure, based off of the hubbub made over this one, I'm pretty sure he will be in agreement. Like I said, we just started this a few months ago because we were starting to have issues of repeat offenders.
Right.
And one of the issues with Mr. Shipman is trying to get in contact with him because he's sometimes there, sometimes not. So that we have been able to get him, we were able to overlap both the inspections and codes fine for the addition and the special enforcement on top of each other.
Right.
So ideally, hopefully, when we get him in there, the judge, we will have that order in hand. So if he's willing to sign it, then like I said, we'll have to go through our bid process and we can go from there.
One last question, Mr. City Attorney, is the abatement process, is that local or is that state?
Well, that would be local.
Could we, and I know we've done a lot of work on our ordinances, I don't want to convolute those, but could we put provisions in there to speed up the abatement process in certain situations so it doesn't go 2 or 3 years before it gets to that point?
Well,
Or that's just
absolutely.
purely under the jurisdiction of the judge, I guess?
Well, I mean, it's the discretion of the judge, but with a case this severe, I mean, the code enforcement folks will ask for immediate abatement, and that judge can order, environmental court judge sitting there on Wednesday can say, Mr. Hutchison, you have authority to go in 24 hours and start removing the debris that would violate the ordinance. So
I would just, I don't know if we
that's
could
what'll
add
be-
some teeth to
that's what'll
ours
be requested.
to get it in, yeah, so they could get to that process sooner rather than, because I've seen the history of delay, and fines and citations, and 30 days and 90 days, and pretty soon you're 2 or 3 years in the same spot.
Right.
Well, let's
Thank
look
you.
at that time frame then. Yeah,
Thank you.
You can do that. And also, John, Drell has talked, with one other thing we have in this community is when people are suffering from certain mental illnesses, they do hoard cats and other animals. And so we've been called upon our animal care and control to come and remove 50, 60 animals from somebody's home because they're suffering. And we usually bring New Horizons with us because it's such an indicator of a larger problem. I don't know if you've ever had the circumstance of doing that, but they've been helpful to Drell, so.
Correct, yeah, he has, I think, 5 or 6 dogs that's living in that back? 3 or 4. Yeah, so we brought animal control in on that end as
But
well.
I'm talking about asking Drell, pick her brain about how they use New Horizons, and the next time you go out there, whatever it is, however it is she does it, take a New Horizons person with you. I mean, usually when we go to take those 50, 60 animals, we have a New Horizon person with us to help the person through this transition. So anyway, I just put that out there. I know she does that. I know it's been part of her process, and it might be worth you chatting with her about how it works under her different circumstance. Counselor House.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'm pleased that the council wants to try to stiffen the penalties if there's a way that we can. I have a cousin that lives on this street, and I saw it when I went out there to visit her and her husband, and I was shocked, to say the least. On the court-ordered abatement, can we only clean the front yard, or can you do the backyard?
No, it's the whole property.
Whole property. Can you go inside the house for
No,
the
sir.
hoarding? But front and backyard, you
Everything around,
can?
that's correct.
Okay, for that structure that he built in the backyard without a permit, can you
There's
take it down, or if there are dogs in it, can you get them out, or?
Well, we work with animal control to get the dogs removed.
Right.
That's kind of where we'd have to do some type of selected demolition.
Okay.
We can make sure we have that as well as an option that he still has not pulled the permit.
Okay, all right. Well, I certainly echo all the concerns that have been raised, and if there is any way, Mr. City Attorney, that we can do something to put more teeth into what it is that we've been doing, we need to be able to do this. This is a terrible situation here, but it's not the only one. And you can ride around certain parts of town and see there are other issues, so we do need to take care of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Woodson?
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for putting it on the state legislator with our side conversation. I appreciate that. I'd like to make a request that this video and the pictures we had from the house on 27th Street that we had issues with, several of these properties that we have these problems with, that we provide a packet to the judges and have them look at what we're facing each day in our community. So when they make their decision, they have this picture in their mind of the decision they're going to make. I think we need to have a lunch and learn with them and say, this is what we face, this is what the community wants, and this can be right in your backyard. We need you to exercise every means that you have in your power to help us resolve this issue. I know we cannot tell them what to do, but I believe if you let them see this, and not when an issue comes up ahead of time, this, I'm trying to be very polite and politically correct, but I can't. They'll have this nightmare when they go to bed. and they'll be able to remember each time a case comes in, what this is occurring. I think the biggest portion they need to see is that camera when the little rats are going over to the other side. I think that's very important, and I think the picture of the little kids watching these little rats. It's very important for the judges to see it, the impact, not only them, but our state legislator, that this can be taken to the floor as a 5-minute presentation instead of 10, Mayor, 5 minutes presentation of this is what the citizens of Georgia, the state of Georgia go through, because this isn't only in our community, it's all over. Sometimes pictures are better than just words and documents to read. The other thing is that if the gentleman has a health issue, then there's got to be a way. I think the jail time is the best way for this gentleman because he can be evaluated. And in the meantime, his property can be cleaned. I know what I'm going to say, it's like a cuss word. I know nobody likes to talk about it, but I'm going to bring it up. This seems to me like it would be a good case for Domain, you know, for us to be able to look at, you know, taking the property. And I would say that because it could be a health issue, because of all the state laws, because of the rats. I mean, I know that's like a cuss word in Columbus, Georgia. I know that. But, golly, this is one that I think this is one that we can exercise, something like that, especially if we find that the individual has no relatives, no supporting body, has mental issues. You know, how can we put the community more in danger? And so I would just recommend that, you know, I'm not an expert, but I recommend that we put something together and let the judges see it, the state legislators to take it, and let the 159 counties in Georgia see it. And maybe that will shake everybody's vote in the sense of saying, you know, we got to move these vehicles.
Yeah.
We got to do this. We have people that are hoarders it's affecting people's lives. Maybe when they see this, it would be more beneficial. And like I said, not at the time they're supposed to, before then, because then it will be in their memory, and when they pick up that paper to read it, all those pictures will come back to their minds. So if possible, I would like to request that, and for us to look, City Attorney, I don't know if that's possible, I don't know all the rules behind it, but as in last option, I think that should be something that we should consider after all means are gone, because if anyone should try to come back and sue us, we have a ton of lists of everything that was done to take care of the problem. So the only last thing we have that we can use is Domain. Because you're affecting not only your life, but lives of others around you. And that's all I had to say, Mayor.
Thank you. Councilor Davis.
Thank you, Mayor. This matter kind of reminds me of another situation that Councilor Garrett and I are working on as we speak. Director Hutchinson, you know about it. We've been talking about it, and it's kind of good. I hope that neighborhood is watching this segment right now. It's really the same matter. It's just different in appearance when you look at it, but without being redundant, I think everybody shares the concern here tonight, and you know, this is just total disrespect for neighbors. It's disrespect for the neighborhood as a whole. And I'm not so sure about the mental health matters, and even that issue in itself just takes so long to deal with. This to me looks more like a challenge. Like it's actually a challenge that, you know, and that just can't happen. I mean, that just can't happen. And there's a couple things that I'm concerned about. I know that Councilor Garrett, I've heard this before, Madam Mayor, and I'm not sure how we address this, but it does concern me about the leniency in the courts. It does. And it's especially in a situation like this. It's hard for me to understand. The other thing that, we don't use this word much, but, condemnation, eminent domain, those terms come to my mind right now. Where does that, Mr. City Attorney, where does that play into all this? I mean, because ultimately, if it gets to that point, this just cannot happen. You got to do something.
Yeah,
This is
normally-
a public health hazard,
I mean, nuisance is the way to approach this in recorder's court with the proper fines and/or jail time and abatement of a nuisance order. Condemnation is used to totally take somebody's property for a public purpose, like a road project or a park. I mean, we're not really talking about that here. We've got to get an order to abate a nuisance.
Well, is that the ultimate sentence in a situation like this, the only recourse that we have, or can it be taken further? I mean, I'm really trying to reach out there to see how far, because it just seems like there's more and more of this happening in our community.
Yeah, and the nuisance angle, that's why Georgia law provides that recorders courts, cities, counties, the local courts can address these matters through abatement orders.
Well, something's not working.
Right.
It's not working.
Yeah, this is obviously a very severe case.
Well, this is a severe case, but like I said, this is not the only one. There's several. And it seems like we're doing this all the time. It's like a rerun, to be honest with you. And Director Hutchinson, I know that you guys follow, and it's important for the citizens to know that there's a process that you always follow, and somewhat the department's hands are tied. You have to go, your department has to go through a process. But what about, like, external agencies out there, like the insurance companies or mortgage companies or banks and all? Can they be contacted? Can they be brought in as a resource to try to, lack of better, just put pressure on these people to do the right thing? Is that part of the process in codes inspection at some point in time? Does it ever get to that point, or is it just sending inspectors out?
Yeah, yes and no. We don't directly go out there and tell the banks what's going on, but when they do an inquiry on the property, if somebody's trying to sell it or do something with it, and if they're interested in it, then they do ask us for any liens or any violations that are against that property, and we do then provide them that information. So they do have that list, because I know the city attorney's office we get plenty of those for records requests on things like that. So
I think they'd really want to know if they have insurance, if they have a mortgage. I know one we're dealing with, I don't think there's a mortgage. But I think these people, these companies that have a lot of risk would want to know, and certainly they have leverage. But I'm in with my rest of my colleagues in putting something together, Mr. City Attorney, to craft some language to send to our legislators to try to and put it on the legislative wish list, like Councilor Thomas was talking about.
Okay.
Can you do that?
All right, well, we'll be glad to put something on the list to ask for more powers from the General Assembly to deal with this type problem. I'm not sure, which angle they're going to want to pursue it. The nuisance angle is already on the books, and that, to me, is the logical way to go here. But
Well, and in closing, is this all we can do, or is there, I just asked the question, is there more out there? Is there something here we're not doing? Because it's somewhere this has got to, as the mayor talked about, it's just got to stop.
well, that's why the last 6 months we've been able to get the court order, because we were having that repeat problem, and we were trying to take that next step. So like I said, ideally, this would be the third property that we've done under a court-ordered abatement, to have the court allow us to come onto the property to remove the nuisances. Like I said, if it's a situation where it's just trash and weeds, we take care of that. But this one has that complexity of also having a junk vehicle. So, like I said, it's going to look good for a while when we clear it out, but that grass is going to grow back up. I don't know if how often he frequents the place, and now he's going to put more stuff back in the trucks. Like I said, I think right now, adding that step is the next step that we've had. I don't know, we can continue to explore other options, but like I said, the main apparently, it's what, there's 18 cars, I think, on that side of it? So only 3 or 4 of them fall under junk, but even in that case, trying to get them towed off the property. So we can't do. So the cars will remain. So if that's where the harborance of the vermin, that's remain. So I don't know, like I said, the pickup trucks, obviously we take the stuff off the back of the trucks, that's different, but if it's a 4-door sedan, we don't have access to get into it. Some of those issues, unfortunately, will still remain.
Well, we know demolitions take a long time, but what about this abatement that we're talking about?
I said abatement
How long
typically
would that
takes within a
process-
month. Because
A month?
it gives us
Do it
2
within a
weeks to
month.
go out and get quotes. Once they give us the quote, we give them the authorization to do it. Once
But
the
it
judge
has to go
signs the
through the
court order.
courts.
Yes, sir. So once the court signs the court order, we immediately go into the bid process to get a contract to give us prices of how much it costs to take all
Which
of
court
that.
does it go through? Which court does it go through?
Environmental.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
John, and I think City Attorney, we may not be able to contact the lender because it would be a disparate use of what we typically do, but there's nothing that stops a private citizen from looking up in the tax records and see who the mortgage holder is and sending them pictures of their property. And Mr. Fay, too, I think there is a time at which you can have so many liens on a property, it might be able to be taken by the land bank, but I'm not sure. Might want to look at that. And then Councilor Thomas, you're up next, and there's a 3-person committee who works for other reasons with our environmental and recorder's court, and I wonder if you all could meet in a time that's not public like this, where we're all ramped up about this particular circumstance. Should it be a work session? We don't want to put them in a bad place. Should there be a private meeting where you go through and say, here are the issues we're dealing with. How can we change laws to give you more power? What is it you feel you don't have that is allowing these to rock on? I mean, what do you want us to do to convey that we are serious about this? And just sort of see, I think that would be very interesting to see what their response is of why they feel they can't do more than they are. So, and it's a fine line between having that kind of meeting and suggesting to them that they go and find a particular person, which is totally inappropriate. So anyway, Councilor Thomas.
I was sitting here thinking, Mayor, about having that kind of a conversation with the Recorder's Court senior judge to say these are some of the kinds of things that have come up. I want to, I have another question, Mr. Hutchinson. We just recently passed an amendment to the ordinance about hoarding. Does this not fall under that regulation so that we can make them do something with the hoarding?
Correct. The Council Solid Waste contribute to because the mattresses up there, the accumulation of the clothes hanging out in front of the house, all those things accumulate into that count of solid waste. It would have been a solid waste violation regardless,
Okay.
Unfortunately. The way that location is, it would have been even without that ordinance, it still would have been a violation of solid waste.
Mr. City Attorney, I want to make sure that there have been conversation around the table tonight that says, let's look into it. I want to do more than let's look into it. I would like to request that you bring back to us some amendments to the ordinance that will help to bring a closure to these kinds of situations sooner rather than later. I know that we have to be careful that when the judge gives a 30-day notice for somebody to clean up, we've got to give them the 30 days to clean it up. But if every 30 days you get an order to clean up the same spot and you don't do it, you just ignore the order, then I would like to have something in our ordinance that will give us the authority to do more than just order it. And I don't know what all that is, but I'd like to have some of those kinds of conversations. I also noticed that one of the things that Ms. Truitt requested was that we do something in our ordinance about the food and waste that's stored in the car. the garbage on the property, again, we have to be careful. It's private property. We have to know that citizens have certain rights on their private property. But if there's any way that we can address those issues in an amendment to the ordinance, I want to call for that ordinance. I don't want us just to look into it. I want us to go as far as we can with this to get our ordinance changed.
We'll do it. I think the health department could look into any issues like that, Mr. Hutchison, of food or other waste. They can look into that immediately. As far as I know, they are an entity created under state law for that very purpose. So
Can
if you
Mr.
could,
Hutchison get in touch with him?
he
to do
certainly
that?
can, yes. But we'll look at the other, possibly some graduated fines. But remember again, your maximum fine is $1,000 per day for each offense. So,
Counselor House. Excuse me. Hold on. There we go.
Thank you. So you can take the stuff out of the back of the beds of the pickup trucks, but not the material that's inside the cars. Is that correct?
Unless the doors are unlocked. You see what I'm saying? Like,
Oh,
I
yeah,
don't-
but,
you know,
well, that's another question. If the door's unlocked, can you clean the car out?
like I said, we'd have to talk to our vendors to make sure
Yeah.
what's
Okay.
covered and what's
All right.
not, but.
Okay, now since towing off the cars is a state law issue, is there a state agency that we can go to and ask them to tow the cars?
well, that gets back to what we've had on the General Assembly request list each year.
Yeah, well, I know,
For
but that was to
several
give us
years.
the authority. I'm saying, if it's a state law, then is there a state agency that can act other than us?
Not at this time unless they
Okay.
direct state Department of Health to act somehow to remove this type material, but no, they're going to have to amend a statewide general law
To be able
to
to
either
tow the cars.
let the city and the county tow it
Okay.
off the private property when it's a nuisance of this type, or
Okay.
some other state agency.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Have Deputy City Manager Pam Hodge. All done?
And we hear the concerns of council and Ms. Truitt and the neighbors of that subdivision, and we'll definitely work with the city attorney's office to bring back something that can address this issue. We've worked in inspection and codes to try to follow the ordinances that have been put in place, and we'll see what we can do to make recommendations to strengthen those ordinances for the environmental court to help us with resolving this issue and other issues. As a lot of you have stated, this is not the only issue that we have in the city of Columbus with this type of activity.
Thank you. Counselor Davis.
I just want to say something to the neighborhood in general that's here tonight. I applaud you for your activeness and what you've done. I've got a record here that's almost 2 years long of your work. This is what we see, and it's documented. This is good stuff. So I want you to continue. I'm really sorry you're having to deal with this, but continue doing what you're doing. What you've been doing is what I tell all my constituents, is to document it, get it on video, get pictures and everything. This is good stuff. You're doing the right thing there. And like I said, I tell all my constituents to do that. Creating this file is very useful, very helpful. So just don't leave here tonight and stop. Continue to do it. I hate that you have to do it, but, and continue to make the calls, because this stuff is documented, and we can tell what's going on in our community through your calls. So I encourage you to be patient, and hopefully we can get something done and take care of this mess.
Okay. Well, that ends a very long discussion, but I hope you feel somewhat relieved. We're going to do what we can, and thank you so much. I'm just so sorry you've had to deal with this, and we will continue to put a great deal of emphasis on this and see if we can't do it even better. So thank you all so very much.
Mayor?
Yes.
Mr. City Attorney, when you bring that back, and Mr. Hutchison, maybe the two of you together, would you make sure that Ms. Truitt knows when it's coming up for our discussion so that she can be here if she would like to be? Thank you.
All right. Did you have a question, ma'am?
Is this open for public comment at all this time?
No, not usually, because it's public agenda. I actually thought, I did say earlier, because I thought you all here were about a zoning issue. And when it's a zoning issue, different people can speak. But what you can do is see Mr. Hutchinson if you have a question or want to convey something to him, and he'll get it to us. We're duly alerted. So, thank you. All right, next we'll go to Miss Minnie Brewster, who has a neighborhood issue. Miss Brewster. Oh, okay, yes, all right, it looks like Miss Brewster's canceled, so we'll get her back on when she can be available. And so now we'll move into the city attorney's agenda.
City manager.
Excuse me, the city manager's agenda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The first item on the city manager's agenda is a cell phone tower lease extension at 2300 Double Churches Road. This is an extension of an existing lease. The current payment is $12,876 per year with renewals every 5 years with a current expiration of 2032. They have requested to amend that lease agreement to extend it for 4 additional 5-year terms with a term ending in 2052. As part of this lease extension, it will increase our annual rent by $5,124 to $18,000 per year, with 3% increases over the renewal periods every 5 years, the first one being in 2022. Crown Castle has also agreed to pay us a one-time fee of $25,000, and they will also implement a revenue sharing provision, which they will pay the city 30% of any rent they receive from future tenants on this tower. There is no cost to the city for any maintenance on this particular tower or any of our towers.
Okay, we've got a motion and second for approval. Is there any discussion related to this matter? All right, hearing none, you may record your votes electronically. And it does pass.
Item number 2 is again Crown Castle cell tower lease extension at 3601 South Lumpkin Road. Same provisions in this particular lease, increasing to $18,000 per year from $12,168.
Okay, hold on just one second. We've got a couple things going on here. Counselor Davis, I need you to record your vote orally, if you would, please. For some reason, it didn't pick it up electronically on that last vote we took. Okay, so items 2 and 3 are the cell phone tower lease extension at 3601 South Lumpkin Road and the cell phone tower lease extension at 5105 Steam Mill Road. And it is laid out, of course, the details in the agenda, which are on ECAP. Is there any further discussion on this item, or these 2 items? All right, seeing none, you may record your votes on items 2 and 3. And it did pass.
Item number 4 is a condemnation on parcel 29. This is at 514 Morris Road. The purpose of this condemnation is the inability to come to a suitable agreement with the owner. They're wanting us to purchase the total parcel. The city obviously does not need the whole parcel because of floodplain and environmental issues. We're only condemning that portion that we need for right-of-way and easement. And this is for the Spiderweb project.
We've got a motion and second, and we have Counselor Thomas to speak to the motion.
Ms. Hodge, when we do this sort of thing, we don't just take this property, we pay fair market value, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am. We pay fair market value into the Clerk of Superior Court, and then it's handled through the court system.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure that people don't think that we're just taking their property.
Yes, ma'am. It's based off of an appraisal, and fair market value is paid into the court.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes discussion. You may record your votes electronically. And it passes.
Item number 5 is also a condemnation on parcel 31. This is at 3205 Buena Vista Road. This is also in relation to the Spiderwood project.
We've got a motion and second for approval. Is there any discussion related to this item? Seeing none, you may record your votes electronically. And you might be missing one. And it does pass. Sticking for some reason. Okay. What's that? Yeah, right. All right.
Okay, item number 6 is a radar list modification, and Director Newman wants to just make a few comments about this, a change to what's listed.
I just need some, to make some clarifications, because I think in the agenda report, I was working on that as I was working with some of the schools, and it wasn't really clear. It does include 3rd Avenue from 10th Street to almost to 12th Street, and that's for St. Luke. They have now purchased property along that block, and they are going to expand their school and parking activities. And they do have a lot of kids that cross the intersection at 3rd and 11th Street. So that one will be included for a school zone. Currently, probably not going to do a school zone at Casita Road right now. I've been in conversations with the Muskogee County School District, but if the number of students crossing that road picks up, we may have to do one there in the future. We do want to do one on Fort Benning Road at the request of the school district, because there's about 980 students to date that go to that school, and so that means there's a lot of buses and cars and students and a lot of activity, so we definitely want to establish a school zone there. And then on Double Churches Road, to lower the speed limit, where we did the parking in the vicinity of the park, and then there was a preschool that had a school zone that has ceased to be used as a preschool, so we will remove the school zone there. We'll also remove the school zone for the former Daniel Middle School. That's no longer being used as a public school. I think Columbus Tech may have purchased that property at this point. And then we'll also work with the school district to see if there's any other schools that may have been listed on the radar list that had a school zone that have ceased to be used as a school. So I just wanted to make sure that that was clear, because I know there was a lot of different things. And just for processing, if this is approved tonight, we will submit this to DOT, and they will review and approve, and then it'll have to come back in ordinance form in order for it to be enforceable, but they have to approve it before we can do that.
All right, we have Counselor Davis.
Director Newman, on the Double Churches matter, is this going to solve, I know I brought this up to the department at one time about the matter of a speed trap. I had some complaints about a speed trap in that area where the variation of speeds. Is this going to help address that so it now is a more uniform, just changing of speeds versus where there was various segments right in front of the Indian Temple, the park, the post office, where the speeds changed so quick, and a lot of people were getting tickets in there for a while. Is this going to help? Is this going to help that?
It should help somewhat, but the speed limits, unless it's set at a standard speed limit that's uniform throughout the city, it has to be set based on a speed study, and it has to be approved through DOT. And so the recommended 40 miles an hour was based on a speed study that we had performed at the same time we were designing the additional parking that we have constructed and put into place. And we did that study during one of the highest use times, because we wanted to make sure school was in place and that we had a true representation of the traffic on that road.
Well, if you would just kind of FYI, put that on your radar screen. I know at a time it was like 45, 40, 35, back to 25 in a short period that you just couldn't see it. And unfortunately, a lot of people were written citations because of that. I think Deputy City Manager Hodge might know what I'm talking about, since I think she travels that road quite often, but it's the area in front of the park and the post office and the Indian temple there.
This is the area in front of the park.
Okay.
And the post office. And you do have established school zones on further up, closer to Whitesville Road, where you get into the schools that are up in that, at the intersection in that location, so.
Okay, thank
But
you.
we'll check all of the speed limits and make sure.
All right, we have Counselor Huff.
Quick question. You said you were not putting the one on the Casita Road side, so will that be something done in the future?
Well, again, I've been in communication with the school district, and I think they had like 8 to 12 students crossing there. We did put a crosswalk, and we did put some signage to draw attention to that there would be pedestrians in the area, but the individual I was talking with at the school district didn't believe we needed one there at this time. But in the future, if the traffic increases or they make changes or that would influence that, we can go back and request.
The traffic's there every day. I'm just concerned about the students that have to go that way home. Okay.
But I was going based on what the school district recommended, and they didn't recommend one at this time.
Okay. Okay. Thanks.
All right, lots of good discussion. I'm lost. Where are we? Do we have a motion of any sort? Okay. We've got a motion and a second for the radar list modification request to the Georgia DOT. There's no further discussion, so you may record your votes electronically. And it passes. Thank you.
On the purchases, we have two purchases. The first is engine repair for a Metro Transit bus at $13,147.51.
Second.
Got a motion and second for the engine repair for Metro Transit buses. There appears to be no discussion, so you may record your votes electronically. And it passes.
The second item on the purchases is the court management system upgrade. This presentation was made at the last council meeting.
Got a motion and second. Is there any discussion on this item? Seeing none, you may record your votes electronically. And it passes.
And we also have a few updates. Most of them are very short. The first one is a Trade Center update. The Trade Center Director, Haley Henderson, is here.
Good evening, City Council and Mayor. Thank y'all so much for having me. In my last quarterly meeting with City Manager, he thought it would be a great idea that the Trade Center starts having quarterly updates. Just kind of let City Council and the Mayor know what projects we have taking place and any exciting updates that our team is doing. I prepared a very, very brief presentation for you to have. Take a look, might be some great reading for later. But I want to say, as of September 1st, it's exactly been 1 year since I've served as Executive Director, and tomorrow will mark 2 years since I've been with the city, and I will say it's been the best 2 years of my life. I love working for the Trade Center and for the City of Columbus. If you'll see what I want to show you in the first slide, this is our year-to-date profit and loss trend analysis. And I always say you can push your team, you can set goals, but when you see the numbers, you can really see what your team has done. And I'm so proud of the Trade Center team, our staff, because I couldn't do this without them. We're averaging over 550 events a year now, and we're expecting that to continue to grow for FY19. But if you see this on the first sheet, if we go to the next slide, our main thing was focusing on sales growth and monitoring every penny spent. One thing that I've noticed is there was a lot of spending that was taking place that could have been looked at a little bit better. Contracts that haven't been negotiated, things to be looked at that we were spending that we really didn't necessarily need to be spending money on. So this yielded an increase of 13% in operating revenue and a decrease in 8% in operating expenses. So not only did we increase our revenue, we also decreased our expenses. And for any business, that's always a great thing. For FY18, we came under 7% under budget on operating expenses and 28% over budget on operating revenue. Again, a great thing that our Trade Center team is doing. One thing I want to add to these numbers is considering our operating revenue budget did not change from the prior year, which you'll see on my spreadsheet. If we had the same budget goal for operating expense as we did in FY17, then we would have beat the budget of 1.34 million operating expense by 15% rather than 7% of our current budget. Additionally, operating revenue less than operating expense was $804,000 in FY18, and FY17 it was $483,000, which was an increase of 66%. Total profit increase was $276,000, with an increase of 42% year over year, and this is all in just 1 year. As mentioned before, cleaning up client contracts and vendor contracts are still in the works, and we expect that to continue to change this next year. One thing that we're really excited about, our food and beverage vendor, which we work with, Spectra Ovations, this is the first year we broke $1 million in return back from F&B Commission. My major goal continuously is to help the city, so I want to attract more people to come to Columbus. We love our local business, and we still want to be that avenue for our local business and citizens to have a reasonable option to host their events, but also want the state and nation to know where they can go have their events. So this will continue to help our economic impact. Again, proud of our team. I know that this is just a start, and excited to report these numbers. And when you get the chance, when you really look at them, it was a remarkable year for the Trade Center, the best we've had in history. One thing that we're doing is what's called signature events. So not only are we hosting an event for clients, this means it's an event that the Trade Center runs and produces from ground up. The Southern Lovin' Junkin' Show, which you might have heard about, was our 3rd year. This year alone was our most profitable year. We had this about 2 weekends ago. We averaged about 2,000 people that came, and it was a $10,000 profit from this event for our city. One thing I want to add to this, our next signature event, if you can be on the lookout, we started the Breakfast with Santa, which benefits the Children's Miracle Network. I always say when you have a great facility, it's important that your employees know that we got to give back to our community too, and all this money will stay for our local hospital here. So that event will be coming up in December, which we're averaging over 300 families now for that event. Front canopy project. So many of you probably have noticed that there's been a lot of construction taking place out in front of the Trade Center, and I often get the question, when is it going to be complete and what is it? So as you may recall, in FY16 and FY17, we had a major roof renovation that took place. This is basically the second half of that. So the front canopy has not been touched since it was built, and the wood was decaying, and it was actually becoming very dangerous for people to park underneath there or walk underneath there. And if we didn't do an action immediately, it would cost a lot more money if we were to wait. So that project will be complete by mid-October. As long as this rain will stop. So we're looking forward to having that complete, because we know that that accessibility for our clients is necessary. Just to add on again, we are excited about this new upcoming year. We're growing our staff, we're growing our team. Most importantly, setting goals, letting them know they have value. And every event is our ability to make history, is our slogan, but most importantly, to make memories and remarkable events for our clients. One thing that you will see me advocating throughout probably many years is the need for hotels. I am constantly losing business because we do not have the hotel space to occupy what we have. So trying to be a little bit, trying to think of creative ways right now to still attract that business with the not having the amount of rooms I need across the street. And we've been very successful working with the CVB on that, but I know to really see what the convention center can become and know it can be, that will be something in the future that the city will have to see. So, but I am proud of our team, proud to represent the city of Columbus, and look forward to bringing you more updates quarterly.
Wow, what a great, great report. Congratulations on all the wonderful things you're doing. We've got several counselors that would like to speak. We have Councilor Garrett.
Kudos, Director Henderson. Those numbers look great, and I will add to what she said about the hotel. It was discussed on this NRC trip, and it seems like it comes up a lot, that in order to get the kind of business we want to get on the convention side, we've got to somehow attract a larger hotel here. And also, I do want to point out, I like that the presentation is in black and white, and we're saving some money. So if there are other presentations that don't involve like a pie chart where we need it, let's save some money wherever we can, because this is perfectly great, looking up there and watching the color up there, but saving some money here. So I appreciate your attention.
Thank you.
We've got Counselor Huff.
Director Henderson, so good to see you always. I publicly always say I've been a fan of yours for years now, watching you move numbers outside of city projects, and now you're a part of the city. And you've always been about the business of doing what was right and making things profitable wherever you've been. So thank you. I'm glad you had to update on the renovation,
Absolutely.
what was going on, because we've been all trying to, I've been outside giving direction on which way to come in.
I appreciate that. Thank you. We're trying. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. But thank you for the great job you're doing.
I appreciate your kind
Let
words.
us know.
Again, I couldn't do it without my team.
Thanks.
So,
Yeah, please take kudos back to your team.
absolutely.
All right, we have Counselor Thomas.
Director Henderson, I too want to say thank you for what you are doing down at the Trade Center. The question that came to my mind, I know that there are some plans, and I'm not sure where the plans, those are and what stage they're in, for some additional hotels in downtown Columbus. Will that in any way help with the issue that you're talking about with hotel rooms? Or I know they're not right across from the convention center, but would you?
Yeah, I can elaborate. Any additional rooms is going to be helpful. So, I'm always going to be an encourager for any rooms. I will say there are types of conventions that they have to have a set amount of rooms connected to the facility or directly across from the facility for them to even consider us as a site location. So even though it could be walkable or only so many blocks away, they still need that magic number, which is 300 rooms for our city, for the size of our city across the street.
Well, and I want to join my colleagues that have said to you, what a great job I think you're doing at the Trade Center. It's a source of pride to be able to walk through there and to see some of the changes and some of the upgrades that you have made. And still, as my colleague said, keep that bottom line where it needs to be.
Yes.
And so just another appreciation and thanks for what you're doing.
No, thank you so much.
All right, Counselor Woodson.
Yes, as the district representative, I can't be no more prouder of you than I am right now. You've done a great job. You've shown those that didn't believe in you that you can do it. These numbers are showing it, and it's telling the story. What I like the most of every single time I've been there, you have been there, and you're greeting everybody. I just went to an event not too long ago, and everyone in staff is just, hi, welcome to the Trade Center, hey, And I want you to know that is very impressive. I've taken people that have never been there, and they're like, this place is so friendly. Is it like this all the time? And that's what we want. We want people that come to visit our city to feel that love, that welcoming, that they'll go back, tell others, and bring them back. I know it's hard to see the hotel vision, but don't give up. It's all about timing.
It is.
As Columbus is being placed on the map each and every day, things will come.
Absolutely.
Things
Thank you
will
so
be
much.
here. You're welcome. And thank you and your team.
And we have Counselor House.
Well, one more set of kudos. I was part of a national convention that was held down there just recently, and all the comments about the Trade Center were great. So everybody was very happy with how that worked out. The one comment that I did hear, which echoes what you just said, that some of the visitors wanted to have a hotel connected to the Trade Center. I didn't realize that would be a thing that would strike their minds as an issue, but so I concur. What you said, that is an issue for us down in the future. I'm not sure how we fix that, but if we ever come up with a way to build a hotel connected to the Trade Center, that would be a good thing.
One day it should happen.
Hope so.
All right. Haley, thank you so very
Thank
much. We
you.
appreciate you being here.
I appreciate the time. Thank you, everyone.
All right, next we have the comprehensive plan and Director Rick Jones.
Good evening, and I want to come and share with you about the comprehensive plan, the update, and give you the update for that as well tonight, and let you know that you are being forewarned about what's coming down the pipe with this. And Councilor Garrett, let me go ahead and diffuse you now. We print everything we possibly can in color just so everybody understands what's going on. And I can assure you, y'all take this to the bank, I can assure you what we have done over the last year and a half, we have saved more than enough to pay for several color copiers in this city. So just understand that. I say that to give you a forewarning about this because we are at the bewitching hour for the most part in terms of getting this plan to DCA and so forth. Here's a quick reminder about what this really required of us. This is a state requirement. This is not something we made up or dreamed up ourselves. The state does mandate this for us, that we require to put together a comprehensive plan, a master plan for our community. And it's got to have these elements in here in terms of like community goals, needs and opportunities, land use, all that in there. And you will see that in the document itself we have presented to you tonight from that. In addition, the plan has got to be citizen-based. And I say that unashamedly. It has got to have the input of our citizens involved with this. Otherwise, it's not a plan. It's just an action that the planning department puts together. It's got to be there. And also, of course, the plan's got to be updated every 10 years. Just for a more interesting footnote here, we are basically do ours every 5 years because we know things change. We try to update, we try to keep it current from that standpoint. You may recall this slide from the last presentation we made back in May about all the public hearings we've had, all the online surveys, the citizen stakeholders group, the technical stakeholders committee and so forth, Columbus 2025. All these elements you see on the screen here tonight are things that have been put into the plan itself. Again, it's not been done in a vacuum. It's made sure that everything is encompassed in with this. And I will tell you now again that just in case anybody asks or it comes up in a conversation later on, we are not ashamed to plagiarize anybody either. We took everything from the 2025 plan, which is what the chamber plan put together. And we said, why should we reinvent that wheel? Here's the information. Let's make sure and let's try to put it forward as our document as well to help encourage and promote that idea. Same thing about the consolidated plan, which comes out of community reinvestment, and the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, which is a new name now for the Long-Range Transportation Plan that we put together from the MPO side as well. So all this information is in this document, or at least referenced in this document itself. You may recall also when we talked to all our citizens and got the surveys back and everything else, we came up with 4 different categories of interest we heard, dealing with economic development, land use, transportation, and housing. And the items underneath each one of these are the things we thought were key common elements that we heard in our discussions. Things like the brain drain from losing our young folks to other communities and moving out, or transportation dealing with relief of congestion. Who hadn't heard that in a long time? Things like remove slum and blight. Those are issues we heard, and those are key elements in the plan itself from that standpoint. Again, the basis for all this documentation is really the public participation input, and from that we go to the idea of setting aside and establishing the community visions and goals for the community from that. Then along those lines, we come back to the idea that eventually we have to put together this thing called the short-term work program. If you don't hear anything else I tell you tonight, listen to this. The short-term work program is the heart of the comprehensive plan, because what it does, it sets in motion how we're going to achieve the community visions and goals and how we're going to give the feedback to our citizens in terms of what they've already told us things need to be done over the next 5 to 10 year period. The short-term work program is that key element. This is the vision that we have put together now for Columbus and dealing with this in terms of working together and make sure we include individuality and diversity, being on the regional concept. These are all things we've all talked about. We just put it into a more concise statement now about community vision itself. Now, one of the other things that the state requires of us is for us to go out and to identify character areas. These are areas in the community that have some special purpose, some special need, some special desire. And we have to try to address those. And this is not necessarily an all-inclusive list. This is the ones we came up with through our meetings. The state mandate said it's got to be a particular geographic area or district. It's got to have a unique or special characteristic, much like the uptown area itself has that, or or some other areas in the community. It's got to have potential to evolve into a unique area. The Liberty District is a great example of that. Or it requires special attention due to unique development issues. It may have infrastructure needs, or it may have housing needs, or things like that we should address, and we try to do that. Not going to try to go through all this. You have this in the handout. You have it in the book itself. But I just want to bring to your attention tonight the character areas we've identified here as a whole. Old Town, out there on Veterans, that new development in terms of the uniqueness about that. The Veteran-Whittlesey commercial corridor, not only dealing with Columbus Park, but everything around it, either on either side of Whittlesey where it goes back up toward Whitesville and on beyond into Bradley Park or back toward Moon. Kendall Creek. A lot of folks don't understand or know about Kendall Creek, but it's out in the Panhandle area. It is a natural preserved area that needs some attention in terms of protection because of the fact of potential development occurring out there. There have been some studies done, particularly by some Auburn University students, in terms of trying to identify this area. It's just something that needs to be on our radar. The Beaver Run area, which is close in that area itself, in terms of being some of the congestion we deal with out there, some of the new development opportunities that are going on out there. It's just an area that, again, requires some attention. They all require attention, but particularly in that area itself. Arbor Point, serves as that new point really in terms of new development that could occur around that area itself. And of course, Oxbow, down with Oxbow Meadows and with the Westville and with the Infantry Museum and all that goes on down there, it requires some thought as well from that. The medical corridor we're talking about, really that area that runs really from about St. Francis on up to the medical center itself. That area would also have to include now the proposed new VA clinic to be built out there in the old Blue Cross building. All that area would have to have some ideas of that. 5 Points, which is that area in just a little bit northwest of Midtown itself. There's a lot of opportunity, I'll put it that way. There's also a lot of vacant property out there and things that have long gone beyond their existence or usability that require some thought. We've had a lot of conversations in this room about 13th and 13th. Again, those some issues that have some character that we need to address and have to continue to address and look at over the next several years. The Civic Common, which is the building we're in tonight, dealing with the school district and the library, the high school behind us tonight. Those are all things that are going to occur and require some opportunities as well with development that may or may not happen in this area. We've seen a little bit of that, and hopefully that'll continue. I mentioned to you earlier the Liberty District. We're getting ready to hopefully start pulling together the committee on that in October to talk about the Liberty District and what it can mean for the area and what we should be trying to deal with. But it's just an area that, again, requires our attention. Same can be said about the Historic District, just south of the 9th on down in that area, protecting that area and making sure that it maintains its quality as we go along. South Commons in that same area is involved with that, with the Civic Center and the Golden Park and the Memorial Stadium and the softball fields. All of that has that synergy down there we're trying to look at, plus potential for some development that may occur across the street. Muskogee Technology Park out in the east part of the city itself, with all that acreage out there is ready to be developed. There's no excuse now for us not to be able to develop Muskogee Technology Park. For the longest time we heard we don't have the infrastructure, we don't have the roads. We have all that in place now. And so it's got to happen. And when it happens, though, it may have some dynamic effect on other parts of the community, both good and bad. Cooper Creek Park is one of those gems we have, one we deal with on a day-to-day basis that we got to make sure we protect and keep it up to speed with that as well. Columbus State University pretty much goes without saying about making sure that that area is not impacted or infringed upon and vice versa, that we can protect that area itself. City Village has a dramatic effect, or potential anyway, for the northwest part along the river, particularly in about 2 months here when we get the actual Riverwalk itself completed and opened. You're going to hopefully see some redevelopment opportunities happen along that, because people are going to realize how close they are to the river, how close they are to an amenity that can provide them biking and walking opportunities in that area, and that's the kind of things folks are looking for. The same thing can be said about Bibb City because of its closeness and proximity to the river and to other activities up there. Those are character areas itself. And last but certainly not least is dealing with Columbus Tech in the Bellwood area. Bellwood is one of those special areas that we've got to constantly monitor and look at. For whatever reason, whatever purpose, back in the 80s or earlier, it was actually got zoned to general commercial use, which meant that those folks that were living there were living now next door to a business. That's not right or wrong, just saying what the situation is. We got to monitor that would make sure that we can bring that area back along with everything else up there. Real quickly here. As I said, everything now works into what we call the short-term work program. Involved with all this is dealing with, first off, with economic development. I'm not going to go through this. I won't bore you with it. You can read this as well as I can. These are all the goals we have established in the short-term work program for economic development. Again, this is not anything magical because this is what we pulled primarily out of the Columbus 2025 plan to help implement that and make things happen. When you get into the document yourself, you're going to see a page that looks like this for the short-term work program. And in it, you're going to see things like, I'm going to show you here real quick, like goals here in terms of align local business with local school systems. There's a goal there, and then under each one of those, there are actual objectives of how we're going to achieve that goal and what we're going to deal with on that. And we do that all through that document through the economic development section of the document. We do the same thing for land use. We go through that, again, the idea of the land use, how we're going to build off the short-term work program. These, again, are those goals and objectives we're trying to achieve under that in terms of things like promoting land use development, mixed-use development, and things of that nature. Those are the ideas we're trying to do. And again, you're going to see after that, you're going to see in the short term, there's a section on land use, and again, there are goals that we established, the ones I just showed you, but we're also going to show you how we're going to try to implement those goals over the next 5-year period. This is the important thing. Let me go back one real quick second here. I want to show you this. We've talked about this before about the short-term work program. In the left-hand column, though, is the actual goals and the objectives. In the middle there are the years 2019 through 2023. It's a 5-year plan. We identify whose responsibility is it for it. In this case, it would be Columbus 2025, which is the chamber to implement these ideas. If we have a cost, we show that cost in there. And we also try to provide where the funding could come from to make these things happen, involved with all that. And we do this all through the document itself. And the same thing is applicable here. We're dealing with the land use issues and so forth and that. There are about 40 pages worth of short-term work program stuff in here. We left no stone unturned on that one. We do the same thing for transportation. Here are some goals that we have established, that we heard again from our citizens, what we want to see happen. These are the transportation ideas, again, in terms of preserve or enhancing transportation facilities. How do we go about doing that? What's it going to take? And who's going to be responsible for that, and how long is it going to happen? Those are identified, again, in detail in the short-term work program. The same thing can be said for housing. These are the goals, again, for the housing itself in terms of how we're going to incorporate housing into the community as a whole. The biggest issue I think we're facing as a community is housing, and how we're going to accommodate those who need housing, and how we're going to make sure housing stays affordable, and at the same time, it encourages folks to come and live in Columbus. That is a real challenge, I think, because we have a lot of older neighborhoods that are beginning to really show their age. They, in some cases, have lost their viability, and we got to make a determination how we're going to go back and take care of those neighborhoods. The same thing is here about this in terms of, this is one of the pages for the dealing with short-term work program for housing, in terms of like this idea about improve access to affordable quality housing. We've identified that and how we can go about achieving those goals as we go. One last thing that we've added on here that we have not talked about before, that's this thing called urban services. Those are things that need to be done in terms of infrastructure needs, or if you solid waste needs, or things of that nature from that standpoint. These are our goals here we're doing with that in terms of what we're looking for involved with that. On this particular section, you're going to see more interesting things about it, because what it identifies is not only goals, but it identifies what year it's going to need to be taking place, and what the cost is actually going to be. And for instance here, I'm looking at this one here about this zero-turn mower. Parks and Rec needs one. we're trying to get them to schedule this out and figure out when that's going to happen and what the cost is going to be and where that funding is going to come from. This is what we're trying to achieve, if nothing else, for the most part, is establishing an idea about where we're going to go and how we're going to get there and what it's going to cost. That's the whole thing about trying to put the short-term work program together, for the most part, involved with that. The next steps here real quick, in June we were here, we told you about establishing the goals, we've done that, and the objectives for the community. July, we actually developed this thing called the short-term work program that you're seeing today in the document itself. We had originally proposed that in August, we would come to council and brief you like we're doing tonight. We missed that deadline because we had other things we're trying to achieve with the plan itself. We're here tonight, though, to brief you where we are on the plan itself. In November, well, let me back up before I go to November. The process now is September, October. We're here tonight, like I said, to give you fair warning. We're giving you the document. We're giving you all the information we possibly can, because in turn we want to come back at the next council meeting, have a public hearing, and say we want you to help us adopt the draft on this documentation. We adopt the draft in the sense that it's not necessarily the final document, it's what we want to submit to the Department of Community Affairs before October 31st. We want to get that to them in October. Once it is approved, not if, but once it's approved by DCA, we will bring that document back to this body and ask you to formally approve it and adopt it as your comprehensive plan. We've always encouraged you because if I've told you before, and I've told the technical committee which met this morning, we all come in here basically with our hat in our hand and say, we need this, this, and this. And there's no real rhyme and reason for some of this stuff that I can see, other than the fact we just want it or need it. The comprehensive plan establishes those goals and those objectives, especially in the short-term work program, in my opinion, that says to us, if you're not meeting one of those goals or one of those objectives in the short-term work program, we don't need to be having this conversation. It needs to have some real purpose, some real meaning to what we're trying to achieve as a community for as far as planning purposes, as far as meeting our goals and objectives, at least over the next 5 years from that standpoint. And with that, I will stop and try to answer any questions. But we will be back on the 9th for a public hearing. At that point, we will present this to you and ask you to approve, basically by resolution, the submission of the plan to the DCA.
Any questions?
There we go. Director Jones, great presentation. It's always a phenomenal experience for me to attend all the meetings that I come to and see it turn out like this. There's a lot of information that was given. Don't know how many know that the way you had the room set up was for different areas, different boxes, different ideas for people to drop their ideas in. And I can't remember exactly how much money you gave us in play money to put in the boxes on what we wanted to invest in. But it was a very, very, very great turnout every time I showed up, and the people were very excited. So thank you so much, and I'll be doing some extra reading and looking forward to us moving ahead. Thank you.
Let me say one thing about the document also. I had nothing to do with this. I had absolutely nothing. I looked at it, made sure my name was spelled correctly. That's about it. Will Johnson and Trey Wilkerson and John Renfro put this document together. And that's why I was facetiously talking to Councilor Garrett about this. We had talked when we started doing this process, it was going to cost us, we were looking at to budget at least about $600,000 to do this document. You're not getting anything near that, I mean, as far as cost-wise. But quality-wise, yeah, you're in that $600,000 range at least with this document. You should know that, and you should be proud of the staff that put this together because they did a great job with that. So our objective now is just to get DCA and get it approved and march on.
Mr. Jones, thank you and to your staff for all that you do. We do appreciate all the hard work that you do for our city.
Thank
And
you.
we understand your commitment and we appreciate it.
Thank you.
City Deputy Hawks, your next presentation?
Thank you. This is the transportation update that's been on the agenda for the last couple meetings, and I'll try to run through it quickly. But as you know, for transportation, we have various funding sources that we utilize to do projects throughout the city, the other local option sales tax, a portion of the infrastructure, the paving fund, the T-SPLOS, both the project and the discretionary, GDOT grants, and then our LMIG allocation from GDOT. And we try to leverage as much as we can from the different funding sources to make sure that we receive as much in grant funding as we possibly can. Transportation projects, currently we have 10 projects that we're managing locally, and I'll go through some of those. 3 that are managed by GDOT. The Talbotton Road project, the estimated completion for that is 2021. That project is moving forward very quickly. The Veterans Parkway North, the estimated completion is the first quarter of 2019. That has been a slow-going project, but there is light at the end of the tunnel on that particular project, as well as US 27 and Custer Road interchange. That project is substantially complete. We have 3 active bridge projects, as well as 19 projects that are under development in some form. The Follow Me Trail Bridge, this was the concept for the bridge that crosses Victory Drive. As you can see, these are pictures of that bridge that was on the side of the road a few weeks ago, and it is now set in place. They're finishing up the approaches for both sides of this bridge, and we hope to have that completed by the end of the year, and we'll have a dedication for that as well. On the Forest Road Phase 1 project, the estimated completion is the end of this year. This is from Floyd Woodruff to Chautauqua Road. And you can see that sidewalks on both sides, turn lanes in the middle, and they're completing the project by the end of the year. The Riverwalk Big Mill, this was the concept for that project. This should be done in the next couple of months. You can see the concept of what the proposal was for those expansions across Bibb Mill. And you can see the work that has been done. The bridges are being set in place. And we anticipate having an opening for that by the end of the year. This is going to be a beautiful point for being able to see the river and the bridges. When you look at it from some of these pictures, when you drive down the Georgia Power Access Road to where the city pavilion is, you don't realize how high up these bridges are going to be, and it's going to really have a great viewing area on the Bibb Mill Riverwalk project. The City Mill project is around the same time frame, so we're planning to have that opening within the next month or two for City Mills. This is where the Riverwalk will go between the 2 buildings and complete the connection of the Riverwalk all the way from Lake Oliver to Fort Benning. So there'll be one continuous project. These were the 2 pieces of the Riverwalk project that were not completed. Those were both T-SPLOS discretionary projects that were in the Band 1 series. Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard, we estimate that the trail will be completed in November of 2018, and that will be followed up with the resurfacing, and we have 2 signal replacements that will happen at Brown Avenue and at Shepherd Drive. So those will follow with the completion of the trail project. Fort Benning Road Roundabout, estimated completion is July of 2020. This is part of the realignment of Brennan and Fort Benning Road, the roundabout at Brennan, Fort Benning, and Casita Road. Streetscapes from Casita Road to Shelby Street is part of the roundabout project. There'll be a trail on one side and a sidewalk on the other side, all the way to Shelby. And then when we get to Shelby to the gate, this is a separate project that's identified as Fort Benning Road Streetscapes, and that goes all the way to the gate with sidewalks on both sides of the road. This will also, at Shelby, there'll be a connection point to get onto the Follow Me Trail to go across Victory Drive at that location as well. Double Churches Park. This was a safety project to provide access from the parking area to the park and also completing the parking area. And these pictures were taken about 6 weeks ago, and it's definitely further along than these pictures represent. But there's parking and landscaped area to address the concerns at Double Churches Park and the safety. Bradley Circle, this was actually a project funded by FEMA. It's recently completed. This was a flood damage project from actually several years ago, and that project has been completed. Winton Road Streetscapes, again, this is another project we anticipate to be completed by the end of the year. This project was funded jointly with Midtown, GDOT, and the city, and then the resurfacing of Spur 22 will be scheduled by GDOT going forward. We're starting to see pedestrians on our sidewalk, which is great. Boxwood Bridge, Boulevard Bridge, this was recently completed. This is right outside the Citizen Service Center. Melrose Bridge is under construction now. That's estimated to be complete by the end of the year. This is on Melrose Drive between East Lindsay Drive and West Lindsay Drive. And then some of the projects, major projects that are coming forward, the River Road Roundabout. This is the 5 roadway intersection with major conflict points. That estimated completion is 2020. And this project is scheduled with continuous flow of traffic, so there will be no permanent traffic route detouring at this site. The Spiderweb project, this is under design. Right-of-way is underway. This is a $40 million project to go across the railroad tracks at the Spiderweb. The Buena Vista I-185 interchange, this is a GDOT managed project. They're currently under right-of-way acquisition. This is a $47 million project. Casita Road I-185 interchange, it is under design. This is just one of the concepts that they're considering. They're currently working with Federal Highways on the approval of the interchange. This is a $58 million project that will really open up this area for additional economic development, leading to the new Spencer High School and the roundabout there at Fort Benning and Brennan and Casita. The proposed roundabouts, there's one at Beaver Run and Macon Road. This is a GDOT project that's currently under design, as well as the second roundabout that's at Macon Road and Lynch Road and Technology Parkway. Again, GDOT projects that are currently under design. And then other projects that's under development or design include the Benning Drive Bridge, Linwood 6th Avenue, Reese Road, Clarendon, the connection of the Infantry Road and the trail, which will connect the Follow Me Trail to the Riverwalk, 10th Street Plaza, Mott's Green, Fortson Road, Williams Road intersection, Victory Drive, 30th Avenue Signal, and the Liberty District Trail connection, to name a few. And I'll be happy to answer any questions, or if you'd like an update on a different project, we'll be happy to bring that back at a future council meeting.
Councilor Huff.
Deputy City Manager Hodge, I just want to say a big thank you to you, Director Jones, all of the planning staff. I have been confused at times, as you all well know, and trying to answer questions as they come in from the public. So all of this is coming together very well now, because I think a lot of this we've been talking about since 2012. And it's hard to conceive that it takes 5-6 years to get to this point where you can actually see it come into fruition, and it's really going to happen, because that's what the constituents say all the time. It's never going to happen. They're just talking about it. So thank you so much. I have something I can work with, because I have a couple of meetings coming up, so I can talk intelligently about it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Councilor Whitson.
Thank you very much for the presentation. If you could just bring us an update later, or let me know where we at with the South Lumpkin Road revitalization. That's very interesting and very important to me, if I can get some updates on that.
Sure.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
And Councilor Thomas.
Director Hodges, as I recall, the list that you showed of other projects under development or design, not all of those have been approved by this council, though, right? You'll bring that development plan or that design plan back to us first?
Yes.
I'm thinking, the Mott's Green renovation, the Liberty District Trail, some of those, we haven't done a final authorization. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yes, ma'am. What has happened is council has approved dollars for these particular projects, and so as they're developed, we'll bring those concepts back to council for approval before they're bid out for construction. So you will see them before they move forward in the construction process.
Would you remind me what the Liberty District Trail connection is?
Yes, the Liberty District Trail connection would connect at 10th and MLK Junior Boulevard to the Riverwalk. So the plan has been kind of back and forth, whether we go down 10th Avenue to 9th Street and all the way down 9th Street and connect behind the Trade Center, or whether it goes across 10th Street to 6th Avenue and then down 9th Street. Those were some of the discussions when the Path Foundation made their presentation about the Dragonfly Trail. So that has not been decided, and it will not be decided until it comes back to council for approval.
Okay, and that would be a council decision?
Oh, yes.
The actual layout of that trail connection, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And the last update that we have, as you know, we have had Amnesty Month for the month of September for demolition liens, and we just want to give you a brief update as we end the month of September. There's a few days left for people to take advantage of that, so Director Alexander is here just to give a brief update.
Good evening. So we've, as we know, council approved Amnesty Month back in July of 2018. And so far, we've had 4 individuals take advantage of the Amnesty program. The amount on the books as far as the demolition abatements that were impacted by these 4 individuals was $27,473.95. The amount of interest waived was $10,306.71. So the amount actually paid to the city was $17,167.24. So I just wanted to provide council with that very brief update while we're in the last week here as far as the amnesty period. And although we didn't necessarily get the turnout that we quite hoped for, I think this is definitely something that we need to look at possibly doing again in the future. I don't necessarily know if it would be an annual thing or, it would be at the discretion of council, but I definitely think it's a program that we need to consider at a later date. Received to the city under the program, $17,167.24. Yes, sir.
Councilor Whitson.
I would like to see us do it again next year, but promote it a little bit more. We mentioned it in the council, but I didn't see much of it like in the media, ads, Facebook, social media, and there could be many, many people that, don't look at city council and we're not really aware of it. I think we need to market it months before, so that way people are talking about it, and then by the time it comes to reality, we would have more takers. Because if you had at least 4 takers and we were able to recruit at least $17,000, that's more than what we had. And I think, and to be honest, I forgot all about it. If I would have known, I would have pushed it in my Facebook and other things. Also, I could have presented more to other people. So I think we need to do a little bit more marketing for next year before we do it again. I'm in favor of doing it again, because anything that we can get some of these properties off our books and get money back into our budget is beneficial. Even 17,000 is 17,000 we didn't have.
It is. That's more than what we collected for the entire fiscal year for FY16, so.
Can you say that again a little bit louder?
It's more than, what we've collected during September of 2018 is more than what we collected for the entire fiscal year for FY16.
So I think that calls for us to do it again, but with a little bit more marketing ahead of time, so that people are prepared and ready for it. I would say like 6 months out, get your pocketbook ready, or something in that manner. Okay?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, great.
And that concludes the city manager's agenda.
I have
All
something
right.
for her.
We have, Counselor Woodson, did you have something else?
Yes. Could you check and see if it's possible, or the finance director? I was just thinking of, public safety usually needs equipment, or there's other things needed, or funding for programs. And as we're looking into the next budget year, just food for thought, is it possible that we can take a percentage of the speeding tickets, or the tickets say right, put it in another line item to allow it for public safety to use it either for equipment or extra bonuses or prizes for, to show appreciation to public safety? Or to put a little bit, aside for vehicles and things like that. Something I want you to think about and see if that's possible. Because at the end, each time we go into budget, we're struggling to get capital improvement or get vehicles or things like that. So if we can just set aside of the citation, some funding there that we can use, would benefit and help our budget a little bit. Just something I was thinking about.
And we'll look into that. Speeding ticket revenue goes into the general fund, and we typically don't segregate specific revenues in the general fund to the department that initiates those revenues, but we'll come back and during the budget process and provide some feedback on that.
Thank you, and I'm glad you're looking into it. And I know, like someone told me, just because we've been doing something the same way, doesn't mean it has to, stay that way, because the times are changing. That was said to me earlier today. So I just want us to try to think a little bit out of the box, what we can do differently to kind of help public safety, because that's the department that, takes a big chunk of what we have in the budget. So it's a way of doing things a little bit different.
Okay.
I know we can't touch the drug money, I know that, because that's used for something else. But if we can do something in that sense, will help out.
Okay.
All right, Counselor Huff.
Deputy City Manager Hodge, I have a little list.
Okay.
Got a phone call about 4 o'clock today to check into, I don't know how true it is, Fire Station number 4. They had a report that the ladder truck is out of commission. And let me know what's going on, because if it is, we need to figure out a way to get another truck over there, because there's apartment complexes right there where the station is, not to say anything about the rest of the neighborhoods out there, that if someone had to be rescued or for them to fight fires at, second, third level up, we need to check into that. And then off of Casita Road, Bragg Smith and Liberty Avenue, Bragg Smith had some issues with some properties that needed to be cleaned up. Some of the owners not doing what they were supposed to do. And on the Liberty Street side, when we built the Brown Avenue Bridge, on that hillside going by the houses, some of that protection side pieces that they put at the bottom have fallen,
Okay.
and they're starting to get some of that to go into the personal yards there around the houses. And then at the end of Liberty Street, I had met with some of the constituents over there before the election about the street at the end somehow was cut through. I don't know, in the past, I guess someone lived around by the railroad tracks back there. But they wanted to know, because people are parking, people are dumping, and they wanted to know if there's any way to close it off where you can't access it at that point.
We'll look into that.
And then I had asked, we still need to figure out something. On Wandering Lane, I got a call Saturday. A constituent actually confronted a person dumping in Wandering Lane in the court up there. She took video, tag number, and she called it in to the police department. But I had tried to ask last year about, is there any way legally that we can put a camera up in that court up there, because there's no houses up there, and put a sign, let them know it's there. But we need to do something, because I went by yesterday and there's everything you can imagine, from mattresses to tires to construction, paint cans and everything that they dumped after they finished working on the job site. Same thing is happening on MacArthur, coming down from St. Mary's Road past St. Mary's School. In the last couple of months, we've had 2 sets of tires and mattresses dumped out there. And then on Sunday evening, we had a scare on A Street at the Flu Allen Rec Center. Somebody came into the neighborhood that didn't live in the neighborhood and confronted some people at the rec center and started shooting. And one or two of the bullets went through a home that went through a child's bedroom. Just luckily, the child was not in the bedroom. And then the neighbors down the street had just moved their children to the backyard to play because people were speeding. So we need to look at it from the speeding aspect, and also, I don't know what the answer is, but I'll get with you, because we've talked about putting a meeting together so they can sit down and discuss it with us and see how we can help out. And that ends my list. I appreciate your patience.
I'll check on the Station 4 as Public Safety Director. Thank you. All right, anything else?
No, that concludes the agenda.
All right, Lindsay, let's get to your agenda.
Madam Mayor and Council, on the clerk's agenda, item 1 is a bio sketch for Mr. Portillo, and that is Councilor Garrett's nominee for District 8 on the Public Safety Advisory Commission. Items 2 through 6 are various memorandums. They're explaining different expirations that are coming up, and to shortly explain the one for the Medical Center Hospital Authority, we received correspondence from them regarding their upcoming terms that are expiring the end of December, but they want to go ahead and get these handled, and that's supported by Councilor Thomas. Items 7 through 8 are street closures. Item number 9 is a resolution excusing Councilor Allen from today's meeting.
Got a motion? Okay, so let's add Councilor Barnes, and who else was that? Oh, and Mayor Pro Tem Pugh? So who made the motion? Would they want to modify it?
Councilor Woodson.
Okay, and a second? All right, all those in favor, please state aye.
We have minutes of various boards. They can be received.
We've got a motion and second to receive the minutes. All those in favor, please state aye.
Under the board appointments, the mayor is working on her nominee for the seat of Mr. Knox on the Columbus Ironworks Convention and Trade Center Authority. Districts 3 and 6 are still open on the Community Development Advisory Council. The Circle Commission still has 2 seats open, and we've been working with them and the mayor's staff on finding people for these seats. The Comprehensive Plan Stakeholders Committee, District 10 is open, and since that project is concluded, we're not going to worry about that one. For Public Safety Advisory Commission, Counselor Garrett is nominating Julio Portillo. He can be confirmed.
I've got a motion and a second. All those in favor, please state aye.
For the Recreation Advisory Board, Districts 1 and 5 are open. On the Tree Board, we still need someone to replace Ms. Winfro. On the Youth Advisory Council, Districts 1 and 2 are open, and Counselor Thomas is nominating Caleb Banks for District 9. She can be confirmed.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second for confirmation. All those in favor, please state aye.
And that's all I have, Madam Mayor.
Great, thank you. Counselor Woodson, do you hit your button there?
Can you check with Keep Columbus Beautiful to see if there's anyone that might be interested?
Yes, ma'am, we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I do have a follow-up. Counselor Huff, excuse my voice. Let's see. The ladder truck at Station 4 is down for repairs, but they have substituted with ladder truck 15, which is at Station 4 physically. So, sometimes they just have to, move it around. I asked if they thought that the apartments were at risk. He said absolutely not, definitely not. So, okay, thank you. All right, we've got a request for an executive session on personnel and litigation. Can I get a motion? A second? All those in favor, please state aye. Great. If you would, please clear the chambers. All right, we have just exited an executive session on matters of personnel and litigation. No votes were taken. And so at this time, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Is there a second? Second. All those in favor, please state aye. All right, we are adjourned. See you next time. Thank you.